Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Daily Deuce. I'm Gary Graves from just outside lovely Louisville, Kentucky on a beautiful soon-to-be spring day. John, back in Maryland, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Gary. Another great week in sports. Like you say, the days are getting longer. Hopefully that means we get ready to have some nice warm weather. I'm always happy when it's 95 or higher. So I'm excited about talking about some sports. We'd be remiss if we didn't say hello to the main man, Mr. John Pitt.
John Pitt, how are you?
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you doing?
All right.
Great, man.
All right. Real happy.
Hey, Gary, let me ask you a question. You mind if I give another shout out to a few of these kids again with the high school playoffs and everything going on here?
Oh, not a problem. Go right ahead.
I get a little excited this time of year with the high school basketball, and these kids have been working so hard, and some of them I'm known from playing in my basketball league. Now they've grown up and gotten taller than me. One of them, Delonte Raynor, plays over at Fairmont Heights. Unfortunately, his season has come to an end. They got knocked off in the playoffs, but he's a senior looking to go to a college next year, and we wish him nothing but the best of luck. Last night, I had a chance to go and watch Ty Bevins. Saw a great game, Gary. Wynn Park and Douglas, down at Douglas.
That's a rivalry game. Yeah.
Oh, man, it was a rivalry, and it was a regional final to see who was going to the state quarterfinals. Everything was on the line. And Ty Bevins and Gwynn Park, unfortunately, came up short. They lost 51-47 to Gwynn Park. But I'm going to tell you something, Gary. This kid, Ty Bevins, 10th grade, 6'5". As the kids say, he's going to be a problem for a lot of people over the next 2 years. Quite a ball player. I feel bad they came up short, but I really enjoyed watching the game down there last night. Devin Dinkins, Gonzaga College High School. He's already signed to go to George Mason next year. They're in the DC State playoffs, and they're in the semifinals. They're going to play Wilson, I think, tomorrow night. So we wish Devin and Gonzaga nothing but the best of luck, and we hope they can move on to the finals and win a championship. And last but not least, Kyle Luddy, playing over at Patterson Mill High School in Bel Air, Maryland. They won their regional final to beat Havre de Grace. Don't ask me to say that one again, Gary, but they beat Havre de Grace 76-70. Now they're moving on to the state quarterfinals where they're going to play Smithburg. And I'm going to tell you something, Gary. I've been watching tape of this kid, Kyle Luddy. Absolutely a very, very, very good ball player. And I'm hoping they continue to advance because next week they move into the state semis and the state finals. And I hope that he gets over here so I can get a chance to see him over at Maryland and watch him. But I'm just happy for all these kids and what they're doing and how they've been playing. And they are student athletes, and they're doing a great job. And I wish them all nothing but the best.
Yeah, that's one thing I do miss. Being here in Kentucky, I mean, a hotbed of high school basketball or basketball in general, but high schools in particular, that the Sweet 16 that goes on during the first week of NCAA play, that, because of that conflict where I'm either away or games are going on, kind of at the same time, that I get a chance to watch pure high school basketball. And the thing about Kentucky's format, there's no classification basketball as opposed to football, which they have 6 classes in football. But everybody plays each other. I mean, you're talking about a potential Hoosiers story every year in this tournament. And yes, some small schools have won it, not recently, but it's one of those things where everybody is on a level playing field. And we're getting back to the point now where they're starting to pack Rupp Arena for that. And it is really something to behold, to just watch, these schools from like the far-flung regions of Kentucky, go up against some of the big guys, and in Lexington and Louisville and Northern Kentucky near Cincinnati. And you have to appreciate just the sheer joy, the sheer competition, and in games like that, at this level before it becomes serious in college. And, make no mistake, it is serious in high school as well, but you just see the joy and the pain, but generally the sheer happiness of playing, which, you, John, as a coach, you can't underestimate that. There's just, it's something you can't even place a value on. You just know how good it feels sometimes just to get out there and play.
You're right. I totally agree with you, Gary. That's why I love this time of the year.
Yeah. And, the thing about what you just said, or what we've just discussed, is like, it's good to talk about, just the sheer joy of playing, because right now, in terms of spring, that might be the only thing that we get is basketball, because sadly, John, we're looking at another lockout and shutdown of Major League Baseball. They announced earlier this week that the first two series of the regular season have been canceled. I'm kind of skeptical about that, because Major League Baseball really doesn't want to lose that kind of money. But good luck trying to reschedule 91 games that got wiped out because they are at an impasse. I really don't know how optimistic to be with this. John, you and I have gone through, I'm going to say, at least 3 or 4 lockouts and strikes during our lifetime with baseball. Of course, the worst one was '94 that wiped out the World Series and stretched into '95 with a delayed season then. And that's what we're looking at right now. My biggest question is, how much money is enough for either side? Because the owners really want to win this thing this time. I mean, the players have always kind of had the leverage because, they are the product. But I see the owners really kind of digging in this time, even though they're the ones that are responsible for this system that, you're talking about $350 million salaries. And of course, if you've been following any of the talk around Juan Soto, where his agent, where he turned down a 13-year, $350 million contract offer from the Nationals to stay on, even though he's got at least another 2 seasons before he becomes a free agent. But, you look down the road, by the time his contract ends, he could be worth $400 million or more. And he could be the Major League's first $500 million player. And that's what makes you ask yourself, is a baseball player really, really worth that? The question is, if an owner is willing to pay it, then yes. And that's where it's incumbent upon them to put some kind of sanity in what they give these guys. What do you think?
Well, Gary, I agree with you. I mean, we'll never know when enough is enough for money. I mean, that's a rough one right there. That can't be answered. I think, to me, it comes down to a very succinct argument. It's a piece of pie they have there. The owners want to move around the slices of pie. The players want a bigger slice of the pie. I think that's what it comes down to, and they got to find a way to find a common ground. I think when you look at baseball, Gary, as one of the sports that you and I and lots of people, they call it America's game, but it is a game where they're losing a lot of popularity, and it's hard to get it back. And a strike for baseball, a lockout, whichever you want to call it, is a bigger hindrance and does more damage to baseball as opposed to having a lockout and a strike for football or basketball. Think back to '94, Gary, when they stopped the season, they missed the World Series, and then they came back. And think how the TV numbers were down, the fan numbers were down, everything was down. One of the first things that helped get it going again, if I'm not mistaken, was Cal Ripken's breaking the consecutive game streak. That helped some. but it really didn't get going until the home runs that Bonds and McGuire and Sosa were going at. That's when things changed. But we also see that as that changed, and as the people who were behind it turned the other way and didn't want to see what was going on, these three, or even Clemens, these four are paying a price now and can't get in the Hall of Fame. But does baseball have the time to go ahead and do this again now and take a chance of losing what momentum and what energy they have? Baseball, as much as you love it and as much as I love it, it's a hard sport to get people interested in. It's not a fast-moving sport. It's not a continual motion and movement. It's a slow game. I mean, I love it. Give me a ginger ale and a bag of peanuts and sit me out there in right field, and I'm happy. I'm totally happy. But that's not everybody's wish. So I think as they stop and have this lockout or this strike, it's going to hurt both sides in their pockets, because they're not going to be able to return as strong as they were before. And even as I said, they're strong, Gary, they were still struggling. Let's be honest. They got money, but that baseball is not a sport everybody wants to watch.
Right. And that's one of those things that baseball has to address, is the quality of the game. I said a long time ago, you can't build up a fan base if you're starting games at 8:30 at night, World Series games at 8:30 at night, and they're running until close to midnight. You can't do it unless you have some kind of speed up measure. We've heard about pitch clocks, we've heard about limitations, but as teams change, between at bats. I feel like you've got to do something to really speed up the pace of the game to keep people engaged, because again, the NBA, I think they, take a page from their book in a sense. They start their finals games around 9:00. And more often than not, John, you can pretty much count on those games being over by 11:30 on the East Coast. You're talking about 2.5 hours. And that's even with a high stakes game, more commercial time and that kind of thing, but they still keep the pace going enough where you can figure on a game being over by, like, say, 11:30, and you can still watch your late local news. That's the problem that baseball faces. Is like, I mean, John, you and I, we've been to Nationals games and Orioles games, and it's one of those things where we go to a 7:00 game. Remember, they used to start at 7:30. They moved them half an hour, but you're still getting home close to 11:00 at night. That's change. That really does have to change. Because people just don't have that time. And I think obviously, before they can address issues with the game itself, they've got to address the financial issues, because they are like hundreds of millions of dollars rather apart on getting back to the table. And you and I, we can sit here and can complain and blame both sides, but for those that are involved, it's a serious matter, particularly the owners. That's I'm not taking the owner's side, but again, you've got to have some fiscal sanity in this game, because again, you're talking about the potential for a player to be almost worth as much as entire franchises in small markets. And those are the ones that I think are really going to suffer the longer this thing goes on.
Totally agree with you, Gary. I totally agree. So I'm hoping and praying that they can work this thing out.
Yeah. Speaking of business models and improving things, the state of the two established local basketball teams in the DC area, Georgetown and Maryland and Georgetown, depending on who you root for. Of course, the news out of College Park is that Rick Pitino has been talked up as a candidate. And, you've heard my feelings about that since he was here in Louisville. I don't know. I mean, he went to great lengths today to post a tweet saying that he's committed to Iona, and that's all noble and well and good. But let's face it, if Maryland can get that salary package together, if they can, give him whatever he wants, he's gonna listen because he's Rick Pitino.
Well, Gary, let me first say this. I need him to do more than just listen. I need him to come on, leave New Rochelle, pack those bags, and come to College Park. That's what I need. That's what I need. I mean, no harm to our owner. The Gales have a great team, have always had a great team, all the way back when Jim Valvano was coaching them. And I'm sorry, but Maryland is struggling not only as a team, but from a relevant standpoint. I'll tell you, I'm not going to take up a lot of time on this, but I'll just say this. It all brought this full circle for me these last 2 weeks because I've been watching the ACC network and I've been watching the tournament, the story of the ACC basketball tournament. And if you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. They have 8 episodes. Next week is episode 9 and 10. And it goes to show where Maryland was as a basketball program. When Lefty Driesell was there, when Gary Williams was there, they were relevant. Lefty lost a lot of close games. And he had some heartbreakers, mainly the 1974 game when they lost to NC State. But my point is this. They lost, but they were still relevant. Relevant to the point the NCAA switched the rule the next year so more than one team could get into the NCAA tournament.
That's right. Yeah.
They were relevant where Gary Williams came to Maryland. They were suffering from some draconian NCAA sanctions that were put upon them. He stuck it out, and they Final Four one year, a national championship the next year. They were relevant, and they have become, I'm sorry, irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. They have not done a lot. They're in the Big Ten right now. They struggle. They've won 2. They beat
Ohio State and
they beat Ohio State. They beat Minnesota last night. But they're still irrelevant. You put Rick Pitino over there. Yes, he is 70 years old. And as my son Dante says to me, Pops, he's just as old as you. Why would I even want you over there? So, that's fine. I mean, I love you too, Dante. But anyway, you put him there for 5 years.
That's just ice cold, man.
You put him there for 5 years. He's 75. But I guarantee you this, Gary. Gary Graves. He's there 5 years, and they have at least one Final Four. At least one Final Four. So I think they need to look hard at him. Also, ticket sales are going to go up. Alumni money is going to go up. He's going to bring a lot of excitement. You live it. You've seen it down in Louisville, what he can do. Love him, hate him, indifferent about him. He is a winning coach, and he will turn a program around. Look at Providence. Look at Kentucky. Look at Louisville. Look at the New York Knicks. Let's not look at the Boston Celtics, but look at those.
Do we have to look at the New York Knicks too?
When he left, they were winning. They were winning.
No, that's true.
We got the playoffs. They had he couldn't go much further because they had a guy named what was that guy's name? Michael Jordan, who blocked everybody from going there so far in the East. So my point is, bring this guy in. Now I wouldn't keep him much longer than 5 years because Dante's right. He's older than me. So 75 as far as I want to go with him. Then I give him a full retirement. You hear me? Even though he's done 5, I give him a full retirement. Give him everything, the car, everything. And I'm happy. I think they have to try to get him. You have to swing for the fences. You have to go ahead and do all you can. Put a buyout package together now. I guess you don't really have to do anything for Turgeon because you're already paying him. And Danny Manning knows he's an interim coach. I mean, no harm to Danny Manning. He's done an admirable job, but Danny Manning is not the excitement you need in College Park. Gary, you were at the University of Maryland. You were there during the Lefty years, and you know the excitement. Waiting around trying to get in the cold field house for the game, and you couldn't get in unless you got there early in the morning for that game against Carolina, that game against Duke. So I think you got to go at Rick Pitino. You have to go and do what you can, and you have to swing for it. And I'll tell you this, Gary, you'll say I'm crazy. If you swing and you miss on him, you know who I'm going for next?
Oh boy, I give up. Yeah, I'd love to hear this.
Bruce Pearl.
Ooh. John, he just at Auburn. I'm not sure that's going to happen. He just got, because remember, he was mentioned as a possible candidate here at Louisville. That was all they needed. And I'm talking about like 48 hours. The moment his name really came up as a serious candidate for Louisville, he got a big raise. He got a facility for his team. I mean, he brought in money all of a sudden just by being mentioned for another job. And of course, it helps that, his team is in first place in the SEC in a conference where he not only has won the tournament, but he's got a chance this year to really make a good run at the national championship and topple none other than the University of Kentucky. Now, back to Rick Pitino in Maryland. Okay, there's two things that have to be seriously considered here. One, you mentioned his age. And for how long? Because hiring him is a short-term solution to possibly a long-term problem, no matter what conference they're in, no matter what the state of the program is. So if you hire a 70-year-old man and you're talking about him being out after 5 or 6 years or something like that, then you got to start all over. He's got to really put some kind of mechanism in place for his succession. I've heard talk about Ralph Willard being a candidate. He might be a good one to consider in a long term because he is a Pitino disciple. But back to Pitino. The second thing you have to consider, these NCAA violations or allegations that are hanging over him from Louisville with the bribery scandal that several schools are still awaiting resolution for, including Louisville. He faces a show cause penalty. What they're doing right now, the indications are in terms of penalties, if you look at NC State and Auburn, Bruce Pearl got maybe a 1 or 2 game suspension out of it. NC State, they really held the coaches more accountable as opposed to, say, shutting down the program. Whether that bodes well for Louisville remains to be seen, because Louisville is a repeat offender, sad to say, because of 2 things that happened under Pitino's watch. Do you take the chance on somebody? And for Pitino, let me say this. If he goes after that job, it's about redemption for him, plain and simple. I mean, he's got Iona on the verge of another NCAA tournament berth. They are a very good team. I don't know if I'd want to play them in the first round or second round or wherever they're seated. I don't know if I would want to face that team. But for Pitino, it's about the spotlight. It's about the big stage. And, for Maryland, as much as I would love to, have that big name in College Park at my alma mater, you have to consider these things at what cost. And wherever he goes, there's still going to be that stain of what happened at Louisville kind of hanging with him, the same way some people like to bring it up with John Calipari at Kentucky and what happened at UMass and Memphis. I mean, he's moved past it or whatever, but the naysayers are still going to be there. And they're going to be there with Pitino. He's got to watch the store if he's going to take this job, because that's really the thing that he's been criticized for here. Either he watched the store, knew what was going on, or he didn't, and things, imploded because he looked the other way, because, he left it to others. Or as he said, he made the wrong hire.
Hey, Gary, I'm going to tell you this, and I know you got to move on to another segment. I'm going to tell you something my dad told me a long time ago. Mm-hmm. The real cute girl that you want to go to the prom with you, the only way she's going to go with you if you ask her. That's all I'll say. Think about those words.
Hey, John, I have lived it, okay? Having been that frog wanting to go to the big dance. So hey. I know what you're saying. It's a good little metaphor.
The only way it happens if you ask. That's the only way it happens.
Yeah, we didn't even get a chance to talk about Georgetown. The only thing I'm going to say that and move on quickly is that Patrick Ewing got a vote of confidence, which buys him another year, I guess. But something's got to happen because I guess what is it? They've lost something. What is it? 18 straight. Am I right?
18, and they're playing tonight with a chance to lose 19 straight.
I mean, John, who would have thought that even before John Thompson got? I don't think that's happened since before John Thompson arrived.
They have the longest or the worst losing streak in Big East history of any team. I'm torn about that one, Gary. I really am, because I'm a fan of Coach Thompson. I'm a fan of Georgetown.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Pat Ewing as a player and all the great things he did there. I just don't know, man, because personal. I mean, but the other question I have to ask is they say right now he's going to stay. But if they get to a point where they decide that they have to part ways, what do you do? Do you continue with the Georgetown family, or do you tear it down and go in a completely different direction? That's what the administration's got to decide.
Yeah, no, you've got to go outside, and I'm going to say that's one of the problems with a lot of programs, and Louisville is included. I understand the whole thing that they've got to be, I guess, a part of the atmosphere. They have to know the culture and everything to coach there. But in a sport, in a business where you got to win games, all that loyalty stuff has to go out the window. And I'll just use Louisville as an example. Kenny Payne, former Cardinal, has been talked up as a coach, but this would be his first head coaching job. Do you do that in the sake, for the sake of maintaining loyalty to the program and the community, or do you go after someone who's going to win games and recruit and keep you competitive for years? And most importantly, with Louisville, this is less so, of course, with Georgetown. Are you going to be able to weather any kind of NCAA penalties? Now, with Georgetown, I think the biggest thing is you've got to get somebody in there that can win games and, most importantly, recruit. Because again, that fluke that they won the Big East tournament last year, as much as I love watching that and listening to it while I was at the SEC tournament, in a sense, that it was a fluke. I mean, we're seeing how much of a fluke that it is. And this program has basically hit rock bottom, which neither one of us thought we'd ever see. The point here, you're going to have to probably go outside if it gets any worse next year. If he starts off 0-5, or let's just say 2-8 or something, you really have to start thinking about making changes, because it happened here. And as drastic as that seemed, I didn't think it was going to happen. Sometimes things reach a point where it just becomes untenable.
Agreed, man. You said it very well. I can't even add anything to it. Well said.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Let's talk about the NFL, because I know our time is getting kind of short. Well, the combine goes on this weekend. I don't know how you feel about watching guys, run 40-yard dashes and jump and all that kind of stuff. This year is a little bit more compelling to me, maybe because some players from my state are participating, such as Wan'Dale Robinson, who's a 5'11" receiver from Kentucky, and Matt Corral from Ole Miss, who's trying to come back from an ankle injury in a bowl game that is still being debated whether he should have played in. But I think for a lot of teams, this draft is going to be very, very important. And I think I'm paying attention to see what guys really stand out for teams that they say need quarterback help, like
San
Indianapolis, Washington,
Francisco.
Yeah, San Francisco, Tampa Bay. Yeah. And the thing about some of these quarterbacks is, if you're talking about building for long-term success, yeah, it's great to have a skilled player, but let's just go back to the Joe Gibbs era. How did they build their teams, John? They built the team by basically getting that lineman who can anchor that unit for years and protect your investment at quarterback, no matter who it was. Somehow Joe Gibbs won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks and the same offensive line. That's what teams really, really need to consider right now. As much as, I think, you see that little shiny object, dangling in front of you. One, you don't take a running back in the first round. You can take a quarterback, but do you take a quarterback in the first 10? I mean, who do you go after? Or do you go after them? Or do you draft a lineman or something that's going to anchor your line for 10 years or so?
Well, you mentioned a guy that I have a lot of respect for, and that's Joe Gibbs back with the Washington teams in the 80s. That team was built from the inside out. What I mean by that, they got the linemen. You had Jacoby, you had Grimm, you had Bostic, you have Mark May and whoever else is there, Lachey, or depending on what year you want to look
Lachey.
at. Yeah. So a quarterback, in my opinion, and from what I've read and seen, I don't see any of these quarterbacks right now I would take with a top 10 pick, Gary. That's just my opinion. I don't see any quarterback out there who is a game breaker or a difference maker. I don't see that. So if I am that GM and I'm that coach, I'm looking to strengthen my line. Prime example, like take the Baltimore Ravens. You have Lamar Jackson, but if you don't give Lamar Jackson some linemen and strengthen that interior line, he's going to get killed, and he's not going to be healthy next year. So I think line play is important. The guy Matt Corral, I like him. I think he's a very good quarterback. I think he can play in the NFL. But would I take him with a top 10 pick? I probably wouldn't. I just don't. Top 10. Who's top 10? Would that be the Washington Commanders? And who else is a top 10 team? Top 10 in the draft. A top 10 quarterback in my mind is somebody that can come in and be a game changer. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong, Gary. And I just don't see any of these quarterbacks. Pickett, I think the kid's name is Pickett from Pitt.
Oh, yeah, Kenny Pickett. Yeah.
He's another good quarterback, but he's not a difference maker. He's not a game changer. He's somebody that I would take. I think he would be good, but I would take him and give him a year or two to groom and make him right. I mean, like you said, I definitely wouldn't take any running back in the first round. Running backs are a dime a dozen. If I'm a GM, I am building my interior line on offense, and on defense, I'm doing the same thing, and I'm getting myself some big cornerbacks who can run.
Yeah,
that's what I'm getting. Yeah. That's what I want.
Yeah, because and I don't want to say quarterbacks are a dime a dozen, John. I mean, it's all excellent points, but like I said, if you can draft a quarterback, but you gotta like if you're building a building, what goes in first? The cornerstones.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you have to start. One cornerstone can be an offensive line, like you said, defense, linemen, linebackers, the secondary, then come back to drafting the glamour guys, the ball carriers, the quarterbacks and that kind of thing. And you had mentioned Lamar Jackson. Let's think about it up in Cincinnati, that Joe Burrow, as brave, as good as he was getting killed. And you think about the end of the Super Bowl, if they had any kind of offensive line that could have bought him maybe one more play or bought him five seconds, we could be looking at a different Super Bowl champion. And that's the thing that Cincinnati has to look itself in the mirror. Mike Brown, I'm talking to you. When you're trying to build a team and sustain success, you're going to have to really look at, like I say, that anchor at left and right tackle that's going to keep your quarterback upright and healthy. Same thing in Baltimore. If Lamar Jackson's going to reach a Super Bowl, that he's got to have protection. You can work on this game, but you have to have a line that's going to give him time to work on this game.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. Yeah, and like you said, Burrow was sacked 50 plus times this year. And
Yeah.
it's only, he's a tough kid. He's a very good quarterback. He's got a great future, but you can only take so many hits, Gary.
Yeah.
Only take so many hits.
Yeah. And I mean, again, like consider that last year as a rookie, where he had a season-ending knee injury, just again trying to stay alive in the pocket. I mean, I think it's what he's played something like maybe 22 games or something in his career, and has been sacked 70 times. I mean, you can do the math on how many times a game that is. That's just you just can't have that. But
Mm.
we can sit here in an armchair quarterback about that kind of thing. But the thing about the combine, again, I think I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to it this year, because I do think that there's a lot of talent in this pool that can help a team, for years down the road. But they're not skill guys. I'm going to be watching the linebackers and the corners and the safeties to see, how those guys pan out in this, and pretty much go from there.
I hear you. I agree.
Yeah. Hey, and wrapping up, John, I'm going to turn serious here for a second, and just like offer up our thoughts and prayers. I know that sounds cliche-ish, but for the people of Ukraine and what they're going through. I talked to an athlete from Canisius yesterday whose family is still there. He's going through it. I mean, there are a lot of athletes from Ukraine. I think there's 6 players in Division I basketball from that country, who I can't imagine what they're really going through. I mean, they can talk to us and tell us things, but once you get off the Zooms, that they're really dealing with a lot, half a world away, and we just have to again, keep them in our prayers, and just make sure that they have the support that they need.
Totally agree, man. It's a very unfortunate situation over there. It's a terrible situation. My thoughts and prayers are with the Ukrainians. This hopefully, prayerfully, is going to come to an end very soon. This is just, it's no need for this to be going on. It's a rough situation, and I just hope and pray that it ends soon.
Yeah. Well, so lift our spirits, folks. Continue watching sports. You can watch us for sure on YouTube and Facebook. Tell your friends, tell your family. John Pitt, thank you again for being the traffic cop for us, and and keeping us honest. And John Webster, look forward to seeing you next week.
Hey, I look forward to seeing Pitt and Gary next week. Thank you for everything. You all enjoy your sports this week. Have a good time. And also, if you get a chance, tell Rick Pitino I said hi in New Rochelle. Tell him I said hi, and see if he can find his way to College Park. Y'all take care. Have a great week.